2 weeks ago, state regulators on the Water Quality Control Commission adopted a new rule for copper mining companies. Critics say it overturns New Mexico's efforts to protect groundwater and possibly provide loopholes for other industries to pollute aquifers. Mining industry officials and the Environment Department contend the new rules streamline permitting and offer more protections, actually, to groundwater. But Attorney General Gary King, media mogul Ted Turner, and several environmental groups want the State Court of Appeals to halt the rule. They claim it's unconstitutional and violates the mandate to prevent water pollution. Laura Paskets, you've covered this extensively and quite well, I might add. There was an incredibly long process already in place, and you say it went by the wayside in this case, so that a lot of money was spent over many months. Now a lot of money could possibly be spent on litigation instead. Where do we stand now that Mr. King has weighed in on this? What happens here now that he's weighed in?
Well, the rule, now that the appeal has been filed, unless the judge issues a stay, the new rule will be published in the State Register and come into effect after 30 days.
Okay, interesting. Now, your sense of where the courts and the judges are leaning now, as you've been watching, can you glean anything at this point? It's awfully hard, isn't it?
I can't. I mean, there's one way to look at the issue. You could say it's like environmental groups versus mining companies.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually not the way to look at it. There was a process in place. The legislature directed the state to come up with this new rule for copper mining companies. And they were directed to work with stakeholders who would agree on this final rule. And so there was this big, long process that took 7 or 8 months. The state hired a retired bureau chief who was a groundwater expert, and he sort of herded all the stakeholders. And it was months and months of meetings and stakeholders coming together and agreeing and disagreeing. And there was this draft rule that was the product of all these stakeholders and experts coming together. And that rule was at the New Mexico Environment Department, and it was tweaked by the general counsel, who's now the Environment Secretary. And I think that's worth paying attention to, that there was a process and it was changed. Sure. And that was the rule that the Water Quality Commission voted on and adopted. And so I think there's these process issues that it would be hard to imagine that the court couldn't take a close look at those.
Yeah, that's interesting. One more thing for context. What interests me about this is we talk about copper mines and dairy farms, but it's a vast array of situations here that use water, isn't it? Like over 900 some locations statewide. Do I have that correct?
Right. That could. So for the copper rule in particular, currently there's 3 copper mines in the state that are owned by Freeport McMoran, and those 3 copper mines have the groundwater below about 20,000 acres is polluted. And so these are industries that provide jobs. These are industries that provide revenue to the state. They're historically important, but they also impact our groundwater resources, which are super important in a state like New Mexico.
There you go.
And the worry is that by saying, okay, the copper mining industry doesn't have to abide by this specific rule anymore, or this way of protecting groundwater, that sort of opens the door for other mining industries. And that's why the New Mexico Mining Association supports the new rule that the Environment Department has adopted, because they're interested to see how it'll affect other types of mining.
Sure. And Sophie, on the legalities that Laura mentioned, your sense of this, and again, I'm curious, it just seems to me everybody wants a waiver. And it's just one thing has to happen or the other thing has to happen. Either you're in compliance or you're not in compliance. And I'm just curious how, with what Laura's describing, the process that took a hit here. What's the legal issues here?
I think actually Laura did a beautiful job of describing what happened, and when she describes the tweak that occurred, the tweak really is the granting, in my mind, is the granting of the mother of all waivers, sort of a super waiver,
right?
Which is that the copper company goes from having to ask permission each time that it wants to violate the rule, to getting kind of a blanket permission to violate the rule,
right,
and to clean it up afterwards if it turns out that was a problem. And that is a big change. That is a big change, and that's a big tweak. So The question that I think is going to have to be addressed is something that Laura touched on. First of all, can you have that shift in the process? Can you see that change? And that's going to be an interesting question if the court takes that up. But then also, there is, I think, this really interesting question of will that actually, if it is allowed to go forward, will that affect other industries? Will that have that ripple effect?
Let's take that with Rob right there. The unintended consequences, I think, is part of the fear here. Your sense of that, where other industries are watching and thinking this might go.
Well, my sense on this was that this goes back to the overall question that you hear lots of times between trying to improve the economics and trying to protect the environment. It reminds me a lot of the debate from a couple of years ago when Susana Martinez became the governor and replaced Bill Richardson, and the whole issue about the Environmental Improvement Board,
Sure.
which was packed by Richardson people
Sure.
who had
Yep.
conservation backgrounds and replaced by Susana Martinez's people who had industry backgrounds. And depending on which way your political persuasion is, either Bill Richardson overstepped things by having cap and trade, and Susana Martinez corrected that, or vice versa. So
Interesting.
but the only other thing I would bring up here is that it appears that that two university presidents, the president at Western New Mexico and also New Mexico Tech, have come out in favor of these new rules. So it's not just the big bad mining companies against the
That's interesting to
environment.
throw in there. Just got a few seconds left on this one, Stephen. Your sense of this as well, where this process hangs right
Well,
now.
I mean, the industry has some arguments. The industry says, well, these were waivers every 5 years, so why not just give us a permanent waiver?
Sure.
And we'll put a monitoring well all around this thing, and if there's a problem, we'll come in and fix it. So, I mean, the question for the court is there evidence supporting the rule?
Right.
And that will be the ultimate question. The process questions tend to flame out on appeal because really it's whether there's support in the record for the rule that was adopted.
Is it your sense that you think industry might get what they need here?
Yeah, I think they have a very good, you know what bothers me? People like Rick May come forward and say, hey, you know, this guy was a budget hawk, he's a conservative, and he says, well, I was in the Martinez administration. They never even asked me about anything on the budget. All they cared about was politics. So if this is just what Susana Martinez ran on, if that's what they're doing, that's bad. If there's a good, rational explanation for it, then that's good for the state.
There you go. It's a good way to finish.